Good evening. The Annapolis City Council's Public Safety Standing Committee meeting is now called to order. It is now 6:10 p.m. We will now have the roll call. Alderman Fred Payon.
Here.
Alderwoman Shanika Henson.
Present.
And yours truly, Alderwoman Pendel Charles. Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. At this time, I would entertain a motion that we approve the minutes from our last committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, on our agenda item, we have number ID-145-18, presentation, the Annapolis Collaborative for Change Grant, Safe and Thriving Communities, Office of Juvenile Justice, Delinquency Prevention. And we have Dr. Pam Brown with us today, the esteemed Dr. Pam Brown, for the Office of Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families. And she will bring us up to date on the grant in her office. Thank you, Dr. Brown, for coming again, and we welcome you back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody.
Good
Pam
evening.
Brown, Partnership for Children, Youth and Families, Anne Arundel County. To remind everybody, about a year and a half ago, we gathered together a group of stakeholders, and on behalf of the county, we applied for what's called the Safe and Thriving Communities Grant from the Office of Justice, which is a federal grant. We were very surprised to receive it. We received it in September, I guess, for the start of the grant beginning in the end of October. So we created a task force or committee that we call the Annapolis Collaborative for Change. There's a core team that meets with representation from the mayor's office. The chief is on that committee. The county is represented. So basically all of the stakeholders that have anything to do with violence in Annapolis. The ethos of the grant, or why we applied for it, was because at the time there had been a real uptick in youth violence in Annapolis. Now, we'll say over the last 6 months, there's definitely been a drop in that youth violence. But if you look at the trend lines from 2012 to 2018, the actual trend for youth violence is still up. So this is actually not a grant. It's what the federal government call a collaborative agreement, or a cooperative agreement. Let me correct myself, a cooperative agreement. That basically means that they see themselves more as a partner and a guider than a funder. Obviously, they are a funder. So in this first year, and it's a 3-year award, they expect us to create a strategic plan that is due in draft to them at the end of August that lays out a few things. It lays out what they think of as a needs assessment. So what are the needs in Annapolis related specifically to youth violence? What's already in place? So what kinds of services, resources related to youth violence are already present? Where are the gaps? And then what do we as a collaborative suggest in terms of strategies and programming to address youth violence? So we are at the needs assessment stage. We haven't started writing the strategic plan yet. And I think it was 2 weeks ago, right, Alderwoman Pendel Charles?
That you were before us?
No, that the
federal consultants?
the feds came down.
The same day we had our work session.
So
yes.
we've had an actual visit from the federal consultants. They spent a whole day with us, actually a day and a half. They spent time with the mayor, with Alderwoman Pendel Charles. They spent time with our collaborative. They came to our meeting. We gave them a tour of the city. We gave them a tour of public housing. So it really was, for me, the most intense meeting with a funder I've ever had in all my years. They're very, very serious about the work that we're doing. There are 4 other cohorts besides us across the country in various places. And they really are watching the work we do with a very, very, very close eye. So they are reasonably happy with where we are at the moment. And where we are at the moment is These are all the things that we know. For instance, we know that there are 8 gangs in Annapolis that are specifically African American gangs that appear to be related to drugs. We know that MS-13 has a presence here and actually has a presence in other parts of the county. There are 2 other Latin American gangs here. So lots of potential for gang activity, although having said that, we've seen a lot of activity from MS-13, but not an awful lot of shootings in Annapolis that could be related specifically to the gangs that are already there. And then we've talked to about 150 people so far, including youth, and we've got some idea of how the people of Annapolis who are centered around where the violence has occurred understand violence, how it impacts them, what they see as potential strategies going forward. So we have some of that. And now we are going to move into a period where we start looking at what the services are already here, what services and strategies are already here to combat gang violence, what the gaps are, and then what kinds of evidence-based strategies and services will the federal government accept and pay for to address youth violence. So it's a very, like everything with the federal government, it's a long drawn-out process. And we are following it carefully, and I think so far they're reasonably pleased with us. The good news is they get our draft of our strategic plan in August, and then apparently there's this back and forward between them and us, and by December we will have an answer about whether they're actually going to fund what we want them to fund. So it is a very long process. I think what we have been trying to say to everyone is, first of all, you have to understand what's going on. So yes, we know that there was this many shootings, there are this many gangs, we know where the majority of crimes happened, we know a whole set of stuff. But that doesn't necessarily lead you to an answer. So okay, all these things are happening, but it doesn't automatically say, well then we need whatever. So we're in the process of trying to figure out, well, if all these things are happening and we've got this piece figured out, then what kinds of strategies are needed? So let me come to the ordinance that Alderwoman Pindell-Charles has sort of attached to the grant. And I will say that I'm sort of neutral about it at the moment. Whether or not it gets funded, I am neutral about whether that's the answer to youth gun violence. It may be, it may not be. I haven't researched the evidence, and I don't think we have any evidence about anything yet in terms of what might be a potential answer to the issues that we're seeing. So I guess what I would say is we need to be very cautious as we come up with strategies before the federal government have approved the work that we're doing, because the danger is they see us leaping to conclusions before we fully understand the picture. And we have been warned about that, because apparently in the first year of this grant, a couple of the cohorts actually tried to create human services solutions, things like mentoring and other things that the feds were really not happy about. So we already know that. So we're trying to very cautiously map out what these solutions are going to be, and they have to be evidence-based, which means that they have to have already shown some degree of success somewhere else in order for the feds to be comfortable funding those strategies. So that's really where we're at, and it's hard because it feels like the Public Safety Committee and the grant are on different trajectories and different timelines, and there's not anything that any of us can do about that, really. I've got to follow this timeline that the feds have laid out, because in the end it's their money, And you, as the Public Safety Committee, have got to move forward in whatever way that you believe is the right way to move. So I think that's where we're all at the moment. My intent is to align as much as possible with the work of this committee because it makes sense. But in the end, we've got to do what the feds say. So that's really the update at the moment. And it's an ongoing process, which is why when Alderwoman Pindell-Charles and I first met, we talked about me coming to the meetings all the way through until August when we've got this strategic plan done, so that you know every step of the way as we're considering things, as the feds arrive, as things change, where we're at. So that's where we're at.
A couple of things I just want to mention for the good of the order. We had met back in March, and we were looking kind of at the same thing, and looking at an office within the city, and we've looked at different places, and we've also looked at the police department and Office of Community Development and Violence Prevention, to basically have 3 persons housed in that office. One as a chief, one as a specialist, and one as an administrative assistant. All would be contractual positions to take a look at that, because we know that this grant is specifically designated for the city of Annapolis boundaries and nowhere else. And we do know we have at least 15 public/low-income housing development communities here. And when it comes to responses, the people that reside in these communities are going to look to us for solutions. They know they're part of the county, but we're going to be the ones who are going to be the boots on the ground. I just want to kind of tell you, Dr. Brown, or let you know that Alderwoman Henson is the chairperson of the Housing and Human Welfare Committee, so she's intricately involved, which is part of her responsibility in looking at the public housing communities, and Alderman Payon is a member on that 3-person committee as well. So you're looking at a good portion right here on this dais, those persons who will be intimately involved in what goes on and how the grant proceeds. And just to let you know, I do have a meeting on Friday with our legal team to take a look at the draft form of the legislation that will create those positions in that office, and to make sure everything's legally sufficient, policy-wise, and that sort of thing. I've also emailed my colleagues to take a look at it, to get, if they have answers, to give responses. So we're looking at probably having it introduced our next meeting, which will be June the 18th. So we're looking at that. We know we have to be strategic partners in this, because we're talking about the residents that reside in Annapolis, and we do all reside in the city, and we do all reside in the county. But as I see it, when the rubber meets the road, these are the faces right here on this dais, and the folks that are here in the city that they're going to be looking towards for solutions and some things. But I'm going to ask Alderman Payon if he has, since Alderwoman Henson was not here the last time, but I'll start with Alderman Payon to see if he has any comments or questions or suggestions, and then move, because I'm sure Alderwoman Henson will have some based on her chairmanship of that committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
None at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Alderman Payon. Alderwoman Henson.
Thank you, and thank you for the detailed presentation, and thank you to Alderwoman Pindell-Charles for following the public information request and for getting us a copy of the presentation. I did have the opportunity to read all of the materials in advance of the last meeting. I was stuck at work and unable to make it. I was sitting in my car in traffic and realized it's not going to happen. So I apologize for not being here the last time. I studied criminal justice. It's my degree in undergrad. So it sounds like the federal government is tasking you all with finding out what is the source of crime and then fixing that.
Yeah.
That is an incredibly tall order. If
Yes.
you can do that, then, you know,
Yeah. Yes.
that's worth millions and millions of dollars if, you know, you guys can figure that out. Right now, is everything that's going on all volunteer effort? Is it my understanding that none of the grant funds have been allocated yet, but all of the work that you're putting in, the workshopping you're doing, the needs assessment, is that all volunteer?
No. So the first year is what they call a planning year. So you obviously get money for staff time to plan. So my time comes out of the grant. We have a project director. So all of the county time spent actually doing the work is this year's grant money. We have some consultants that are paid through the grant
Okay.
that are doing the sort of the technical pieces of the strategic planning. There's some training dollars, I think. I'd have to look at the budget, but it's all planning. There's nothing. It's a really weird grant, and when we applied for it, we thought it was only a planning grant, but when we got it, it was a planning and implementation grant. So it's really weird, but the first year is tell us what's going on, and then tell us what your ideas are to fix it. So that's basically it.
Excellent. Also looking at evidence-based programs to try to find something that is going to kind of solve the issues. I would hope that we are looking at things that kind of address some of the unique features of Annapolis. Annapolis is a place that has very small concentrations of low-income housing, of poverty, if you would, but then right across the street or right next door, we have places where you have opportunities, where you have, people who live a very different life. So I would be very interested to see if there is a model out there that kind of addresses those unique features of, I think crime can be tempting in whole different ways when you live a life where the people who are with you immediately live the same life as you, but the people who live across the street from you live a very different life than you. So I'm very interested in the findings of the committee and the solutions that you guys come up with. I think it's a real gift that we have the opportunity to have this studied and to have you all studying all the different evidence-based models from all over to see what can really work here in Annapolis. So I'm encouraged by it, and I look forward to it, and I'm so thankful to our chair for connecting with you all on this and working with you all on it. Please, continue to keep us informed, and if there's anything else that we can do, I'm fully invested.
Excellent. I think one of the reasons Annapolis may have been selected, honestly, is because it is so different from some of the other sites that were selected. That part of Chicago is one of the sites. And so trying to compare Annapolis to that is so difficult. So one of the pieces of the actual plan is to do like an environmental scan to describe the city. So that's going to be really interesting. And I think it's why they came down, because they really wanted to see it and understand. And so we did a bus tour with them, and we took them to, really beautiful houses literally right next door to our public housing and our areas of subsidized housing and poverty, and really showed them what we've got here. So I think that was, I think it's going to be really interesting for them and for us. And they're sending us evidence-based programs all of the time. But so far, I haven't seen anything that really fits the bill.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Following up on that, as far as Annapolis being so different, how do we find evidence-based programs to fit a place that is so different?
So there are evidence-based programs that are being developed and strategies that are being developed all the time. And so the feds have their own consultants on this. And what they are doing, among other things, is pulling all of the work that is being done throughout the country that's innovative but has already shown some measure of success. So we have the best working on this. There are days when I don't feel particularly confident that anybody's figured this out, because if they had, it wouldn't be happening, right? And it's happening all over the country, and I don't really see massive improvement anywhere. So for me, this is a real sort of investigatory wait and see. And let's see what we come up with, and let's see, if there are things out there that will be right and fit the bill. But there are days when I think I'm just getting deeper in the woods here.
The other thing is, too, I don't know if you're aware, and I don't remember if I mentioned to you, we're in the process of embarking upon a rather, ambitious program this summer to make sure that every child in public housing and low-income housing is involved in some sort of summer meaningful activity, whether it's a camp, whether it's a pop-up camp, whether it's a job opportunity, an internship. We're literally going to be knocking on doors in the police department as well as the fire department here, very involved in Office of Emergency Management, and involving themselves in these camps. But we want every child, and we've been working and meeting on a weekly basis with Housing Authority, with City Rec and Parks, coming up with some very innovative kind of things, because what we want to do, we're going to have a launch on June the 15th, which is the last day of the school year, and we're going to launch into these camps. We're also, for instance, Janice Hayes Williams is going to be taking children downtown on a tour of the city, as well as going to the historic Brewer Hill Cemetery. We're going to the Helen Avalon Tars Garden. So we're going to be doing some different things. But what we're going to do is, once we get through the camps, at the end of before school starts, we're going to have an end of a beginning of a school year, kind of going back to school, but we're going to be bridging the children and their experiences this summer, their positive experiences, and hopefully that will catapult them into a successful school year. We've also been encouraged by the increasing number of community ambassadors at Annapolis High School that will be going and dealing and working with the children as well as their families. The program started in 2006, has waned, but it's being reinstituted and revitalized this year. We're going to be also, the city is going to be working with the Strengthening Families program in the school system. So we're going to have a series of incentives also for the children throughout the school year. We're going to have some summertime things. The police department is going to be having movie nights. The fire department is going to be providing the popcorn machines. We're going to have some bikes out there. So we're going to be doing lots of things. We're developing a band of city employees that will go from different communities to play. Our new city manager plays a mean saxophone. So we're engaging everybody, and once we get past the budget season, so we're engaging everyone in making sure that this is One Annapolis Safe Summer 2018 covering the waterfront. And that's what we're going to be doing, and it's going to be rolled over into the school year. And we are looking for exciting results as far as the children are concerned and the students, as far as the families. So that's going to be part of the, I guess, the responsibilities of this Office of Housing, of Community Development and Violence Prevention. They will be working in those strategic ways. We're also finding out that a lot of our communities are suffering from a lot of mental health type of issues. So we're going to be working with the mayor as far as that is concerned, but also inviting the pastors in, and because they're adopting the community, as well as some businesses and some athletic groups that are within the within the Naval Academy. We're going to be talking to them as well, as far as basically adopting communities and getting folks to the table, mainly the ministers and the health professionals, and also digging down deep and providing these services to the people that really need them. The beauty of this awesome group here on this dais is that we're all Annapolitans, and we have been our entire lives. Alderman Payon and I have the distinct honor of actually representing the people in which we grew up in the same neighborhood. So I'm not sure about Alderwoman Henson, okay, but she's an Annapolitan. But anyway, so we're invested, we're heavily invested, and we've had this conversation before. So we're willing to work with you to do whatever it takes, because we're here, and we've been here for the long haul. So we're excited about the possibilities. Anything that you can do to help us toward this, I will send you a copy of the legislation once it has passed muster through the law department. And if you have any suggestions or anything, certainly feel free to pass them on. But we are excited about the possibilities and what we can do. And a lot of the people that are working on this are folks that grew up here, who have lived through it and know and understand the issues that we have. Some things we knew about, some things we're just hearing about. But we're so grateful again to what the county is doing, the Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families. You all taking the lead on this, but we definitely, and we know we're going to be strategic partners in this entire process. And we're going to need everybody. We're going to need all hands on deck to make this work. We're determined, and we know this can be done. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. We've got a community, and we know they're behind us. But thank you so much for being here with us. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next month for another update. I enjoyed meeting with the federal consultants. That was very, very good.
Exciting,
it was
wasn't it?
exciting, and
Yeah.
they were obviously underwhelmed, overwhelmed by what they had seen, but they were very good folk, and we're very excited about what we can do. But thank you so much for being here.
hopefully I'll have more to tell at the
Good.
next meeting.
Wonderful.
But
And we
thank
will,
you, and
hopefully we
thank
will
you,
too.
Thank you, all of you. I mean, I'm so impressed by your commitment, all of your commitment.
Well,
to-
we go
to the
back a
youth.
long ways.
Well, you and I do, yes. But it, really, I mean, the aggressive attitude of the city at the moment towards youth, I think is really, really commendable. And you know I mean that. I think
know.
it's commendable.
It's a team effort. No one person can do it alone.
Okay.
Not at all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I'll
Thank
see
you
next
so
month.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Glasses.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is ID 18118, Fire Department update. Answer to questions raised by public regarding EMS responses, hospital status update. Chief Stokes, and you are accompanied by Captain Edwards and Deputy Chief Simmons. Thank you all so much for being here this evening.
Madam Chair and members, it's good to be back in a uniform. Very good to be back in a uniform.
Believe me, it's good to see you back in uniform.
So if you could indulge me for 1 minute, we have a new program in our fight against opioid disease, and Captain Edwards is here tonight to, this is actually a new program that started last week. So he's going to give you an update on it real quick.
So we started a naloxone leave behind program that we had presented to the county health department, and the county health department talked to the state, and then that started in December, and it kind of ran its course, went through all the legal review, and they created this protocol for our paramedics. And now when we go respond on a call and we give naloxone or Narcan, we normally we transport the patient, but we can't force the patient to go if they don't want to. So if they sign a refusal, we can call out our EMS supervisor, go there and explain to the family and the patient, you know, that we have this program, that we can give them naloxone in case something like this happens again, because a lot of times overdoses, it's not a one-time thing. We'll see it more and more often. So we can train them how to use it, and we can give them some naloxone supplied by the health department. We also, with our safe stations, if we have somebody who can't be admitted right away to a bed, we can give the naloxone to them, train them, give them the naloxone, and then they leave and they have that to save them in case we have a problem. And we're the first ones that I've found in the state to actually go through with the naloxone leave behind. There were a lot of people talking about it, but we were on a conference call the other day, and everybody was saying they're almost ready for it. They're almost ready, but we were the first ones to go. Yep, we're out there doing it. We tried to do it a couple times when we thought it would be a good idea, but we're not to that phase yet where we're actually going out and training different businesses and things of that nature, because that would be one of our goals that we would like to do at some point down, in the next few months, but that's not part of the protocol yet.
No. Well, thank you for the update. Any questions from the dais? Yes, Alderwoman Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What is the budget impact of that?
All the money comes from the health department. The health department supplies all of the naloxone, and that's written into the protocol that we'll only do it if we can get the stuff from the health department. And currently, the health department goes through the OOCC, and there's grant money from the state to the OOCC to give this naloxone to the health departments throughout the state.
Would it impact your ability at all to have a ready supply for EMS personnel?
No, for the EMS personnel, we get that from the hospital. We purchased it initially, and now every time we use it, we go to the hospital and we restock from the hospital.
Are we purchasing the EMS supply from the hospital, or is that provided by the county?
That is, the hospital is billing the patient, because normally we transport the patients. So the hospital pays for that. We do have to pay for the atomizers that we put on the end of it for our calls, for our units.
And that's not an expense when a person is administering it themselves?
No, that's the naloxone, and I can show you one, because you have some in that first aid bag right behind you. It's a self-contained, it's almost like an Afrin bottle, but it's just shaped a little differently, and they just take it and they push it, and it goes up, and then it's done.
Thank you.
And if they use it, then they can contact us, or we'll see that they've used it, and we can go back and retrain the family and get the health department involved, and getting them some more if we need to.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Alderman Payon, you have any questions? No. Thank you very much.
So at some of the council sessions on the budget, I was listening in. There were some questions raised from citizens. I thought probably should respond to this question. So one was, why does the fire department respond to fire engine to minor auto accidents? It seemed like it was an inefficient use of resources and a waste of money. And then the second one was, instead of responding to fire engine on medical calls, why don't we send an SUV on medical calls with the medic unit instead of a fire engine and a medic unit? So we addressed the first issue, why do we respond to fire engine on minor vehicle accidents? First, this committee should know, and the citizens should know, that my number one responsibility as a fire chief is the safety of my firefighters, without a doubt. That's my number one responsibility. And one of the most dangerous places that we can operate is on a scene of a vehicle accident. Across this country, there are untold number of incidents where firefighters and police officers have been hit by cars operating on the scene of a motor vehicle accident. It's a very dangerous place to be, whether it's on Bay Ridge Avenue or Route 50. It's a bad place to be sitting. So one of the roles of that fire engine, not the primary role, but the first role when they arrive is they take a blocking stance. They actually become a barrier. They place that large vehicle between the accident scene and the medic unit and the vehicle accident. The accident as a barrier, protect those personnel acting. If you watch on an accident scene, you'll see that first unit come in, kind of position itself on an angle, and the other units come in behind it and start positioning. They start a blocking role to block cars, protect our folks from getting hit, and law enforcement as well. The second issue is a lot of the time that fire engine is a first responder. We send the closest unit, whether it's the fire engine or a ladder truck or a medic unit, whoever it is, whoever's closest, that's the first responder. Most of the calls, when they get 911 calls from people on auto accidents, most of the information is very limited. Because people, they ask them a whole list of questions. You know, is the car leaking gas? Is the car on fire? Are people hurt? Are people trapped? And most people say, I just drove by, I saw the accident. That's all I know is there's two cars involved in the accident. So they get very little information from passive buyers about what the accident's about.
Well, they're pretty excited usually when they call. I mean, frequently they are. And
Information is limited. The other thing is how you describe a minor accident. You can't tell a minor accident by the damage to the vehicle. We all have responded on calls, and you arrive on the scene, and the car is totally demolished, and you think there's no way anybody's alive in that car. And you walk up to it, and nobody's in the car, and you turn around, and the guy driving the car is standing behind you. Doesn't have a scratch on him. Other cars you pull up to, and it looks like a very minor accident, a fender bender. But when you get up to the car, the person either had a stroke or a cardiac arrest, or they're drug overdose, or they themselves have some kind of serious medical event. You know, the auto accident is secondary to the medical event that caused the accident. So then there's issues like, is the car leaking fuel? Is the car leaking other fluids? Is it an environmental issue? Is it a propane-powered vehicle? Is it leaking propane? Is it an electric car? A lot of these electric cars, when the car comes to a stop, the car is still engaged and but the motor shuts down. And people walk up to the car and they're moving the patient, somebody steps on the gas and the car takes off because the car's an electric car. So there's all kind of issues involved with vehicle accidents. It's not as simple as it's a minor accident. So the fire engines go, they have the tools and equipment on the fire engine. If the car catches on fire, they have the fire engine there to put the fire out, to control the fire. So it's not as much as, you know, it's not as, the vehicle isn't just going just to go. There's reasons why it's there, and it serves a major role in the management of that scene. The second question was, why don't we respond to SUV in place of the fire engine? And some departments do that. A lot of departments do that, but they cross-staff both vehicles. So you have a fire engine in service and an SUV. So you send an SUV on the vehicle, take the crew off the fire engine, put them on an SUV and send them out with a medic unit, then I lose my fire engine. It's out of service till the SUV comes back to the station. So if they're on the way back from a call, and there's a house fire somewhere, do they go to the house fire in an SUV or go back to the firehouse and get the fire engine and go back to the house fire? The other thing is, we run a lot of EMS calls in the city, and there are times when all 3 and all 4 of my medic units are on calls. I could have a city with no fire engines in service because they're all in SUVs out there on a call someplace and leave us totally unprotected. So that works well in big departments. They got a lot of resources, and they can afford to staff both vehicles. We don't have the resources to do that in the city. So we staff the fire engines. So I guess in the end, I understand being efficient is good, and we try to make efficient use of our resources wherever we can. Example is our public education programs. You know, our public education programs are designed to reduce the demand for our resources. We can prevent a fire or prevent an injury. It lessens the demand for our resources, the most efficient use of our resources. The Office of Emergency Management does a great job preparing people for natural disasters and other emergencies, make sure they have the equipment and the supplies to take care of themselves, which again reduces demand for our services. But this committee should know, I believe being efficient is important, but as fire chief, I won't trade effectiveness for efficiency. As the chief, I am more concerned with being effective. Let me give you an example. If we get a call for, this is a true call. This is a call for a person who was choking on a piece of steak. They were in a restaurant choking on a piece of steak. We send an engine, fire engine, a medic unit, and our EMS supervisor. The EMS supervisor is trained in RSI, which is rapid sequence intubation. We just started doing that about 2 years ago. So that's basically a procedure, and it's very expensive to train people, but that person can actually paralyze somebody and relax their airway, and they can get an airway in or get stuff out of the airway. And it's a very expensive program. It's very expensive to train them. They have to go to the hospital to be trained. It's expensive to retrain them, to keep them trained. It's expensive to buy the equipment. And I'll be honest, we only do it about 2 or 3 times a year. So if this was a business, it'd be a very inefficient use of resources. But if you're the one choking and you need that service, it's priceless. So this particular call, this guy was choking on a piece of steak. He couldn't get it out. The supervisor came in, did the RSI. He got the piece of steak out. The guy survived. He's alive today. He actually went to the hospital and was released a couple hours later. He's alive. So I understand efficient is good, but I want to be effective. So my goal is that we arrive with the right people, the right apparatus, in a timely fashion. We handle the call in front of us as best we can with the resources we have. So we plan for the worst, hope for the best, but you know, we don't have the opportunity to pick when bad things happen. They kind of come to us. So we just want to, as a fire chief, I'm very concerned about being efficient. I want to be efficient. We try our best to be efficient, but I'm more concerned with being effective and how we provide service to our citizens. So I hope that answers some of their questions, why we do what we do, but that's how I feel as a chief.
Very well said. Had you thought about, I'm just thinking, putting some of those kind of questions, and I don't know if you have them on your website or something, so people just kind of have an idea of
That's a good idea.
the
I
typical
could do that.
questions that you get. And they're legitimate questions, but until you really think about it, you really don't know. I was talking to a gentleman who's in the workforce area. We're talking about the low unemployment rate, and he was saying, but if you're unemployed, I mean, it may be 3 point something, but if you're unemployed, it's 100% unemployment rate, and it's the same thing. If it directly relates to you and affects you, it means much more. So I'm sure the family, the gentleman as well as the family, were extremely grateful for you all being there. But thank you.
Another thing I want to talk briefly about is there's a lot of discussion about waiving permit fees in the council meetings. So when we do fire protection plan review, I have a third party, FP, a fire protection engineer that reviews the plans. I pay him. I have a $26,000 in my budget for plan review. So I pay him directly. We in turn bill the customer, the permit, the contractor or homeowner, and they pay the city. That's how we get our money back. So, you know, I pay them, they pay us, keeps coming back and forth. When they waive fees, like last week, they waived fees for the Tyler Heights Elementary School construction project. Well, my fire protection engineer is gonna review those plans, and I'm gonna pay him, but I reach out to get the money back from, I pay Peter to get the money back from Paul ain't paying. So I have nothing to put back in my pocket. So that's, when you do that, you know, that's money that we pay out, that doesn't come back to me, so it impacts my budget. So what happens is, at the end of the year, I'm in the hole. That $26,000 isn't enough to cover the fees I pay. And then people say, well, why'd you overspend your budget? Well, kind of put me in a spot where I can't. So this,
But the children and the families who attend Tyler Heights Elementary and those smiling faces you will see will be forever grateful that that was a ministry that was done for them.
I understand it completely. I'm just saying, that's how it works. So.
Yes, that's how it works.
Everybody wants to know why we overspend our budgets. Well, that's part of the, that's not the whole reason, that's part of the reason.
Yes. Any questions from the dais? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The practice, the way that we do it in Annapolis with the engine accompanying the other, vehicles, is that a nationwide best practice, or is that just the personal preference of the city of Annapolis?
It's a nationwide practice.
Okay. While we have you and we're on budget, it was some talk at the, Finance Committee's town hall about the bulletproof vests that are in the budget. Are those something that's being required, or is that just another, best practice?
It's a best practice. Fire departments all across this country are equipping their members with bulletproof vests. Amron County just did it. I'll be honest, when we talked about it in the Finance Committee meeting, if you'd told me 25 years ago that we were going to buy bulletproof vests for firefighters, I'd say you lost your mind. But the world we live in today, it's part of what we live in.
And then, are there any positions that you see or any functions that could be conducted by a civilian personnel as opposed to I guess sworn firefighter? Any room there in the department for adding more civilians?
Yes, so the city manager asked for a 5% reduction plan, a 1 through 5%. And in that plan there's some positions that we can trade off for civilians. But there's always a trade-off. So I have some uniformed personnel in certain positions, and we use those personnel to offset overtime costs during special events and snowstorms and all those other activities where we need extra bodies. If you take those bodies away and make them civilian, then when those special events come along, you're paying overtime. So there's always a trade-off. There's yin and yang for everything we do, but there are some positions that we suggested they can change.
Thank you.
Alderman Payon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you have any numbers regarding how many EMTs or firefighters have been shooting victims in the last year or couple of years nationwide? I mean, I'm not aware of any around here, but...
One in Baltimore City got shot not long ago.
2 in PG County, 1 was killed.
Yeah, one was killed in Prince George County about a year and a half ago.
It was like a diabetic emergency, and the guy didn't know what was going on and shot him.
Actually, I think one in PG County was shot, came in on a domestic, as I recall, and
That might be another one.
that was 3 years ago, but he killed him. I mean, right on the spot.
They were at the front door.
Terrible.
Or something.
Well, it's, I mean, believe me when I tell you that one is too many, even nationwide, but just curious from my own background and records if you had any numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief, completed? Well, thank you all so very much. Captain Edwards, thank you so much. We'll move on to item number ID 182-18, OEM update, hurricane preparedness, citywide preparedness exercise on August the 16th. And while we're at this juncture, I would like to congratulate the Office of Emergency Preparedness, which is under the Fire Department, for an exceptional briefing that we had on the Commissioning Week events. It was succinct, it was detailed, it was nuanced, it was right down to the penny. It was exceptional. I commend you all for a job well done, Chief Simmons and Deputy Chief Simmons and Chief Stokes for doing a fine job and your team. That was the first one I've been through. I was extraordinarily impressed. It was wonderful. It takes a lot of work to put that together, obviously, and what you all did was quite admirable. But I want to thank you so much.
Thank you for attending, and next time I'll do a better job in reserving your personal seat there.
Madam Chair.
I had a seat, that's all that matters.
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
just wanted, in behalf of the committee, to tell the former city manager that you have our permission to leave. You don't have to stick around for all the entire committee hearing tonight. Believe me.
Thank you, Alderman
Just want to
Payo.
make sure you knew that.
Thank you.
Yeah, he wants to hear about hurricane preparedness.
All right.
So, Deputy Fire Chief Kevin Simmons, the Director of Emergency Management, and we're going to talk a little bit about hurricane preparedness. And with the month of June begins hurricane season, and now's the time for our city of Annapolis communities to prepare. So hurricane season runs from June through November, and Annapolis is no stranger to hurricane activity. So the 8 years, coming up on 8 years anyway, that I've been here, I've experienced in Annapolis Tropical Storm Nicole, which was September of 2010, Hurricane Irene, August of 2011, and in that hurricane we evacuated parts of Eastport. Tropical Storm Lee in September of 2011, Hurricane Sandy in October of 2012, and Hurricane Joaquin in October of 2015. The pattern of hurricane activity affecting Annapolis usually occurs in August through October. We kind of catch things late. So Hannah Thomas here, she's from the Office of Emergency Management, from our Training, Education, Outreach Coordinator. She's going to discuss a little bit about how the community should prepare for hurricanes and this year's exercise. So, Hannah.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Hannah Thomas again. I do exercise training outreach for the Office of Emergency Management. So as Chief Simmons says, hurricane season began on June 1st, and it technically runs through November 30th, with peak season being, for Annapolis, being mid-August to late October. So hurricanes can pose a wild variety of threats to us, including flooding, high winds, storm surges, and even tornadoes. And it's important for us to prepare now because even though the trend is mid-August to late October, we don't really know when a hurricane might strike. So how are we going to be prepared for hurricanes? So one of the biggest things is to stay informed. So you want to know where to go for your local sources of information and your trusted sources. So we do have an example of WNAV. That's a good station, but also most local channels are going to be giving out the same information. So just know where you get your news from, as well as signing up for Code Red through the Office of Emergency Management. That's our emergency notification system. So that's how we're going to be able to contact you, and downloading our app. So we have an app called Prepare Me Annapolis. It's free for iPhone and Android. We're able to send pushes. You're able to see traffic updates. You're able to create an emergency kit checklist, anything like that through the app. So you also want to get prepared. This means creating or restocking your emergency kit. A few items you might want to include in your emergency kit are water. We recommend in your household 1 gallon of water per person per day. You want to have a food, so if you have cans of food, make sure you have a can opener with you. Flashlight, medications, first aid kit, local maps, and that extra cell phone charger in case you're out of power for a longer amount of time than you expected. You also want to check your insurance coverage. This means reviewing your policy and ensuring that you're adequately covered and understanding the exclusions that you might have, and then contact your insurance agency if you have any changes for this. You also want to complete a family communications plan. So this is going to be how you reunite with your family in case you all get separated. So you want to assemble this plan with your family and your loved ones, and agree on ways to contact one another in an emergency and identify some good meeting locations. You also want to know your risk and prepare for an evacuation. With this comes something that we like to call at OEM the Special Assistance Roster. So this roster is a list of citizens with functional needs who might need assistance during a disaster. They can contact OEM to be registered, and we're going to be checking up on them before, during, and after an emergency situation. Also want to know your shelters. So there are 2 shelters in Annapolis. We have Annapolis Senior High School, and we have the shelter that OEM can run and is fully capable of running, Pip Moyer. Know which ones we might need to be going to if it does resort to that. And then if you do plan to go to that shelter, you're notifying the staff of the special needs you or your family, your loved ones might have. Also, it's good to remember to not return to an evacuation area until the evacuation order is lifted. It could be unsafe, so you want to make sure that you're paying attention to that. Also, in Annapolis, citizens are not to self-evacuate. ADOT is going to assist in this effort. With that, there are 10 pickup points throughout Annapolis. And then for a predicted event, our evacuation is completed through over 3 days. We also have incident management teams, and they'll be set up and located at each fire station. They'll be responsible for evacuating their designated wards. Each team will manage their own evacuation, and all this information is in the OEM evacuation plan. And then lastly, on Thursday, August 16th, the Office of Emergency Management is conducting our annual citywide preparedness exercise, which is Hurricane Anna. We're going to be dealing with the red team and the blue team. Red team is going to kind of deal with a little bit of evacuation, and blue team is going to handle damage assessments. So we're working on the planning stages of that now, and hopefully it'll be great.
Thank you very much for that detail. Questions from the dais? Alderwoman Henson?
It's a little off topic, kind of, but I think you all are probably the best people to pick your brains on it. The question I keep getting is, and I suspect it's our topography, is what makes us different than Ellicott City, and why is that not going to happen to downtown Annapolis? Can you help me answer that?
Well, having worked in Ellicott City for many, many years, Ellicott City is a mini microcosm of New Orleans. It's like a soup bowl. If you come in from the Baltimore County side on Frederick Road, you come down a hill in Oella into Ellicott City. If you go to the top of Main Street, you come down a hill to go into Main Street, Frederick Road, and you got Ellicott Mills. And then underneath of Ellicott City, the Hudson and the Tiber River run through it. I worked in that firehouse. It was the first firehouse I worked at, and I could just go right out back on the picnic table, and the Tiber River was right there. So when all the elements hit at once, water has nowhere to go. And they built up, we used to have public housing on Hilltop on Ellicott Mills Drive, and they built that up to condos, so they concreted. And water has no place to go. There's no land to absorb it. So everything runs into the soup bowl. And that's what happened. And in the city of Annapolis, yeah, we're on an incline, but it goes right into the city dock. It goes right into the water. So Annapolis is different. I mean, Howard County, Ellicott City is different. We don't have that soup bowl effect, if you can follow what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Kind of a follow-up question, because I did hear on the news they were talking about the development. Some folks were indicating that the development caused the problems that they've had over the past 2 years. Was that possibly a planning and zoning decision? Were the environmental concerns recognized, or do you know, or can you say?
I don't know. All I can tell you is I worked there 30 years, and I've been through 2 major fires in Ellicott City. The second major fire made Ellicott City what it was before the 2016. That was a major fire. It kind of changed the face of Main Street, and I think for the good and all. But with development and concrete and nowhere for the water to go, and I understand to actually get it so that this phenomenon won't happen again, it's like $80 million. $80 million. And they say that it's built on a floodplain, and if they were to build it in modern times, they would not do it in Ellicott City. It's unfortunate.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you all very much for your presentation. We appreciate everything that you do for our city.
And if I can indulge you.
Oh, absolutely.
Again, as a chief, using the chief word. So you have this here. In an effort to help Annapolis residents properly dispose prescription drugs and all, the OEM Fire and Police have obtained 1,000 of these drug disposal kits, and they're very easy to use. Basically, you just tear open the pouch, you put in your pills, your liquids, or your pouches, and you add 6 ounces of water. Shake it up just a little bit, reseal it, shake it up a little bit, and you can dispose of it in the normal trash. And what we're trying to do here is folks that can't get to the police department to dispose their prescription meds, and we don't want their prescription meds to get out in the wrong hands. Especially the elderly, we want to try to get this to them where they can just dispose it. It neutralizes the drugs, and they can dispose it in the normal trash. We have these on police cruisers now and ambulances. They're at the firehouses. And anybody who wants one, they can call, or some, they can call OEM at 410-216-9167 or email us at oem@annapolis.gov.
Deputy Chief Simmons, does this go in the trash or does this go in our recycling bin?
In the trash.
Trash, okay.
Trash, yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the dais? Okay,
They are free. There's
they
no
are
cost
free.
involved.
Fine.
And lastly,
So,
again, we have 1,000 of them. We want to get them into the right hands.
Okay.
so you can dispose of 45 pills through this? I think that's what I get from what's on the
45
back.
pills and just 6 ounces of liquid.
Right. Is that at one time, or can this be reused? What-
No, it cannot be reused. Once you
Okay,
put water in it, seal it up, shake
That's
it
it.
up, and then chuck it.
thank you.
Okay.
And last but not least, I want to leave you all with a finalized copy of the hazardous mitigation plan adopted by the City Council. I believe it's Resolution 2-18. Thank you for that. And it was approved by FEMA, and this is very valuable to us because it outlines our mitigation strategies and also allows us eligibility for funding for large-scale disasters and mitigation grant funding like the $13 million we're pursuing. So
Okay.
thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Any questions from the dais regarding the plan? Thank you all so very, very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I see that we have Chief Baker, Lieutenant Kraus, and Mr. Joe Hudson here from the Annapolis Police Department, and I wouldn't let this opportunity go by. If they have something to bring to the Public Safety Committee at this time, please come forward. We're always all ears.
So,
And before you get started, and I want to thank you so much for, again, we'll continue with the thank you as far as the Naval Academy Commissioning Week. We did extremely well from the public safety standpoint, and a lot of it had to do with the police department, and we thank you so much, Chief, for your leadership.
thank you so much. It's not just the Annapolis Police Department, but obviously the fire department as well,
Sir.
and our partner agencies in Anne Arundel County, Maryland Capitol Police, et cetera, helped staff this. So,
Fine. Thank you so much.
absolutely. So, it's not often I will sit before you and thank and pray and give praise to the fire department. Lord knows they get enough as it is. But recently, I'd like to thank Deputy Chief Simmons for taking the bull by the horns and getting us some training with the Fire Department Rescue Task Force. And what that is basically is an active shooter scenario and us working with the Fire Department to get the Rescue Task Force paramedics in as quickly as possible inside the building. Deputy Chief Simmons was able to acquire the library that's under construction or
Oh, yeah.
deconstruction on West Street for 4 days, and we were able to get all but one squad through, due to a technical error, one squad through the training. So I actually went out there one day and walked through with the officers to see exactly what they were doing, how quickly they were doing, et cetera. And it was a very slow, methodical, this is how we're going to work, this is how we're going to communicate. You know, you go from using your regular call number of 113 to contact team 1. So everything kind of changes, and it's a learning experience. And so I hope to take that, we have more exercises coming up, but I hope to take that into some schools, just because it provides an opportunity, a big training area, and to go back into some of these schools and just work on what the Annapolis Police Department needs to work on, because we will be up in a full-scale exercise in August? June. Right, at St.
Okay.
Mary's. So, and that is going to be a little bit quicker, but not full speed.
And I'll give Chief Baker some props because takes a lot of manpower to do this, a lot of sacrifice and some overtime. But what we're trying to do as a rescue task force is that we want to make sure that it's not if it happens in Annapolis, it's when it happens, because these school shootings are happening, it seems like every week. So we're trying to be prepared to do our best when this befalls the city of Annapolis. But what we're doing is every Annapolis school, every school in Annapolis proper, we're going to practice at some point. We're going to do tabletop exercises, and then we're going to do a full scale at every school. So this one, we have St. Mary's coming up at the end of this month, and then in September, we're going to do another school. We don't know what school that is yet, but we're going to keep doing them until we get them done. And I think the final finale will come in 2019, probably in the fall, when we're going to put everything together.
Great. I want to mention something to you, and I'm sure Chief Baker's aware of it. Are you all familiar with, because I've had some conversations, some dialogue about the Handle with Care program?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes,
I've sat in on a presentation from West Virginia who implemented the program, and was very impressed. I've had conversations with Kathy Lane with Anne Arundel County Public Schools, as well as Ryan Voket, and I can't remember who the other person was, but it's basically, from my understanding, it's a program where if something happens overnight to a child, a trauma type situation, there is a pipeline where the information is eventually received by the teacher in the school. It's all done privately and confidentially, and if the teacher sees some negative behavior in that child during that school day following that trauma, they're able and know how to deal with that, and everybody in the building is prepared. Is that kind of the gist of it?
correct. My understanding is that if you come into contact or you see something and a juvenile is involved in, you figure out what school they're going, is that you go ahead and make that notification, handle with care. Handle Johnny with care. You're not getting into the specifics of the incident. You're just letting them know that something happened and they're better equipped to deal with it. And we're kind of doing that now, but not on that scale.
Okay. Because I was wondering if we were, because I want to be kept in the loop. I indicated, Ms. Lane, that we should be kept in the loop. And apparently, based on what I saw, just the county police department were involved, and I indicated to them that if it's happening in any of our city schools within city property, you all are going to be the first to respond there, so you all need to be kept in the loop, and I strongly suggested that to my colleagues over the central office. I know that Sergeant Maguez, as well as, I think it was Sergeant Vaden, they were there in Crownsville,
Right.
Who participated in that as well, but that's extraordinarily important. I mean, I'm in a 800 student elementary school, 100 staff every day, and I see what goes on out in West County, and so this is extremely important. It's something that we really need to keep our pulse on, but I wanted them to know that the city police department has to be part of this Handle with Care initiative, because if not, the ball will be dropped within the
Right.
city.
Right, I agree.
Yeah,
Right.
thank you so much. Any questions from the dais? Okay.
So, real quick, can
Certainly.
so we have that. Crime numbers. We're down still down 25% across the board. We've been down 4 out of the 5 months of 2018, and we were up a little bit last month in April on some property crime. So things are definitely trending in the right direction, considering we're comparing ourselves against 2017, where we had the second lowest number since 1975. So
But we have to remain vigilant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the
absolutely.
summer is coming, and I want to make sure that we have a good communication and relationship with, especially with the housing authority, because
Yes, ma'am.
that's the first line of what we need to be looking at, and we all know that. I'm preaching to the choir, but that's something I'm really concerned about, that we do stick close together.
Right. So, the last time I was in front of the committee, I addressed the budget issue. And again, since the budget hasn't been confirmed, I'll address it again. We have some serious needs, and I haven't put in an enhancement for some things, and I probably should have, but they'll certainly go in next year. We're competing with the county. I'm sure that you've heard this, and the raises and everything else that the county has gotten. So looking for, I don't have a hiring budget, and I think that's something that we need to consider. There are places in the Northeast United States, when you talk New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, that people have a hard time getting on police departments. And so a lot of agencies travel out of state and do one-day testing out of state. And so I think that's something that we need to focus on. We've been very fortunate over the last month or so. We just hired 4 officers. 3 are headed to Baltimore County Academy in less than a week. So we are making some progress, but I'm afraid that with the open hiring process in the county at this point, that we're going to lose some. We've already lost 2 people as laterals this year. We're about to lose a 3rd, and then you put in this hiring process with Anne Arundel County, and then built-in retirements that are expected this year.
Have they each been to Anne Arundel County?
I'm sorry?
Have they each been to Anne Arundel County? You said you lost 3,
We
or
lost 3.
possibly a 3rd.
1 went to Anne Arundel County, 1 went to Baltimore City, and
They went to Baltimore City?
I
Yes.
did that.
Okay.
and 1 is going to another county, not Anne Arundel.
Well, the fellow that went to Anne Arundel County,
He
was-
retired.
He retired, though,
He
didn't
retired, but he also made it clear that he was looking at the $20,000 signing bonus was
Okay.
part of that determination.
Well, doesn't really make any difference in my thinking, but I just want to make sure it wasn't
Right.
somebody else.
Right.
Thank you.
And so, final update, the Caps are up 3 games to 1. Game 4 is tonight at 8 o'clock.
I did have a meeting today with our city manager, and we were talking about different financial implications, so we'll see.
I don't need to be above, I don't need to be the number 1 agency in Maryland, but I need to be competitive. If that
Okay.
tells you where I don't have to be here, but I have to be there, not here.
Thank you, Chief. And also, thank you this year. I communicated with Lieutenant Kraus as well as Sergeant McGinnis concerning your camps this
Yes,
year.
ma'am.
We've gotten some information. It sounds very exciting. Thank you very much. And
We are doing those camps, the 11 camps, and it looks like we will be taking the lead on those movie nights.
yes,
So, I just I didn't know that you had a conversation with Chief Stokes, but I just talked to him as we were sitting there and asked if he wanted to partner. So we're gonna do that and get those done.
because we had a meeting back in April about that, so that was tentative, so yeah.
Yep.
And Mr. Joe Hudson, I'm assuming that you've talked with Adriana Lee, on the Hispanic liaison for the city, and getting together and talking about some things. concerning the police department as well as community engagement. Am I correct or not? Okay, I would suggest that you do so soon. I think you two will make a great partnership. Thank you very much. All right. Any questions from the dais?
Chief, is there money in the budget for the 12 officers? I know wait a minute, we were down how many officers?
I thought you got us confused there with the fire department for a second.
I think maybe I did for a second, but, well,
We,
no, there was
we're fully budgeted for the 124 that were
Okay.
allotted.
But we have how many active right now?
Right now, 119,
Okay, so
but that's going to drop pretty quickly. And I'll tell you, out of that 119, close to 15 to 19 are soft vacancies because they're either in the academy, they were just hired, or they're on light duty or whatever, so they're not available. I've got 119 on the books. I'm working more with 100.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is legislation before the committee, R-24-18, Equal Protection Task Force, African American Residents. For the purpose of establishing a temporary advisory task force, Commissioner provide the mayor and city council with a public forum for studying and preparing reports about the issues of African American residents of the city of Annapolis and matters generally relating to said task force. Have we all had an opportunity to take a look at this piece of legislation? Okay. Any comments or, this is on the heels of, I will, as a matter of full transparency, Alderman Rodriguez was the one who mentioned that we should have a task force akin to the one for the Hispanic community. And so I'm not going to take the credit for this. Alderman Rodriguez was the one who brought this to our attention. Do we have any questions or comments or suggestions?
May I?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alderman Rodriguez did discuss with me about supporting the task force for the Hispanic community, and I expressed to him my concerns about studying one of our minority populations and not having a task force for the other. I think that the spike that we had in homicides, the African American community was disproportionately affected by that when you looked at victims and perpetrators. When you look at our public housing communities, it is over 90% African American, and those communities are in a time of transition where the ownership interests are changing by way of the RAD redevelopments. I think that it's a prime time to study the African American community's challenges and needs in the city of Annapolis, and particularly while we are convening to study the Hispanic community. I think it only fair and appropriate that since we are taking a look there, while we are having these challenges in the African American community, to take a look there as well. So it was encouraging to see that so many other aldermen signed on as sponsors and saw it as a worthy cause to study as well.
Thank you, Alderwoman Henson. Alderman Payon, do you have any comments or suggestions?
Well, this was a compromise piece of legislation, and obviously it's been completely ineffective in the last year because it's been ignored. The board has not been filled out. I think it's a little ironic that I wasn't even asked to co-sponsor this again. I co-sponsored it last year. I guess not interested in my support apparently. At any rate, look, I'd be willing to go along with it one more year because it did not come into existence. And I don't think we need another board. I think we need a board that will, as my colleague from Ward 6 said, that takes care of issues involving the all the minority communities. I question whether, I question the original legislation, to put it mildly. I think it was a solution looking for a problem instead of vice versa, but at any rate, it exists, it passed. This commission is task force is supposed to exist, and for whatever reason, it got swept by the wayside. Sure, I'll support it for one more year. I don't think it really cost us any money, and I'm not terribly enthusiastic about it, as you can probably tell from my comments, but I don't see any reason not to give it a chance. We were supposed to have done that last year, and it didn't happen, so no problem.
I will take the ultimate blame for being ineffective, and I will wear that badge. I'm the one that's responsible for not doing that, Alderman Payon.
I want to see that badge.
Oh, well, I've got it. I was the one who was supposed to take it, and I did not do that, and I was derelict in my duties. And I will apologize to my council members in absentia and those who are on the dais, because it was my responsibility to do it. I did explain the reasons why it did not, I did not pursue it. There's no excuse, but I will give the excuses. We were, Roxana Rodriguez, who was the initial person who was supposed to take this on as the Latino liaison, contract was not renewed, July 1st. And that was the person who was supposed to spearhead this. No disparaging to her or any of that. It's totally my concern. We were thrown into the throes of the election. We had a change in administration, and all the things that flow from that. But I will wear the badge of ineffectiveness and dereliction. It was my total responsibility for not doing it, and I apologize to you all for not. So, as we move forward, and I will say this, I appreciate Alderwoman Hence's comments concerning this, but one more thing I was thinking about as we've moved through today's meeting, the public safety meeting, this would be, to me, another plus when we're looking at the Office of Community Development and Violence Prevention and this grant, the significant grant that the county has acquired. And to me, this is another sign that we are serious about our residents. I took a recent look at the census, and we have, I think, 16,000 plus households within the city of Annapolis. When I looked at the households of the HACA as well as low and subsidized housing, we're looking at 13% of the households in our city. That's a significant number of households in our city, and so this legislation will respond to at least 16% of the households that we have in our city. I don't know the households of the Hispanic community, but just listening and hearing and being respectful of Alderman Rodriguez and the community and the people that he represents, not only in Ward 6, but those who look up to him in the Hispanic community, I think that this is something we can do. But I looked at this as part of the toolbox when it comes to the grant. I didn't think about that until Dr. Brown was talking, and I realized, I think, this is something that would bode well for that. But by the both of you being on the and being chair of the Housing and Human Welfare Committee, I thank you so very much. But also, Alderman Payon, we would respectfully request if you would be so pleased as to offer your name as one of the co-sponsors of this. If not, then we certainly understand that my dereliction is a part of that.
Yes, Madam Chair. Yes, Bobby.
Just being honest.
Okay.
That's all I can be.
Totally unnecessary, but.
No, it is
but,
necessary. It is
yes.
necessary. So at this time, are we ready?
I believe our agenda has been completed,
Okay,
Madam
but
Chair.
I think we have to vote on this.
And seeing how it's about T-minus 35 minutes till the puck drops.
Okay, at this time, I would entertain a motion that we approve R-2417 and that we move it onto the rest and to the complete body of our city council.
Second.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
All right,
Second.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. The motion has passed unanimously, and at this time, I believe that the agenda has been completed. So, do I hear a motion?
Yes, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
So moved, so seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
It is now exactly 7:30 PM. And look forward to our next meeting in July, which will be the first Monday of the month at 6 PM right here in City Council chambers. Thank you all so very much. Ms. Green, thank you for your support.
Thank you.